You know, if you don't want President Donald Trump calling you a low IQ individual, then you should probably stop going on TV and showing everybody how low your IQ is. especially when you choose to go on The View. She's such a low IQ individual. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go on The View. That'll show them. I guess she decided to go on The View because if you're looking to prove that you have a higher IQ than you actually do, you want to surround yourself by other people with low IQs. And I mean, there you don't find 5 women with a lower IQ than you do on The View. Although Anna Navarro, man, she shocked everybody, man. She came out against hating President Donald Trump. It was really weird. It was really bizarre. I'm not really sure how the producers let that slip through the cracks, but Anna Navarro praising President Donald Trump, sort of praising him, saying she loves him, but also reminding everybody that she still hates him because, you know, he's Donald Trump and she's Anna Navarro. So, but we'll get to all that here in just a minute. There's so much to cover today. There's so much to do. Jasmine Crockett just acting the fool. And I guess, you know what, when you have nothing left to lose except your Senate election in Texas, when you have nothing left to lose but a massively public national Senate race, then you just do and say she's cussing at the Supreme Court. She's trying to explain Venezuela to the American people in a way that is just laughable. She compares President Donald Trump to Nicolas Maduro. There's just so much. There's just so much. Meanwhile, Congress is back in session, so I don't know why she's on The View. She should be in Washington, D.C., you know, doing whatever it is she does in Washington, D.C. I mean, she only got a little bit of time left. This is her final year in Congress. She better hustle. But since it is January 6th, since it is the 5-year anniversary since the peaceful and patriotic protest that President Donald Trump asked people, he didn't even say protest, he said peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. So since it's the 5-year anniversary of Donald Trump supporters peacefully and patriotically making their voices heard at the Capitol, I just like to share this with you, this reminder that Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, this was the day when he solidified himself as a smarmy, two-faced backstabber. And I always liked it on January 6th every year. I think we should really celebrate Lindsey Graham is a smarmy, two-faced backstabber day. And remember, never forget, they say, and I don't want you to ever forget what Lindsey Graham said on the floor of the floor of the Senate, rather, on January the 6th, 2021.
Looking for a way to convince people there was no fraud, having a commission chosen by Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and John Roberts is not going to get you to where you want to go. It ain't going to work. So it's not going to do any good. It's going to delay, and it gives credibility to a dark chapter of our history. That's why I'm not with you. But I will fight to my death for you. You're able to object. You're not doing anything wrong. Other people have objected. I just think it's a uniquely bad idea to delay this election. Trump and I, we've had a hell of a journey. I hate it to end this way. Oh my God, I hate it. From my point of view, he's been a consequential president. But today, first thing you'll see. All I can say is count me out. Enough is enough. I've tried to be helpful, but when the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled 4-3 that they didn't violate the Constitution of Wisconsin, I agree with the 3, but I accept the 4. If Al Gore can accept 5-4, he's not president. I can accept Wisconsin 4-3. Pennsylvania, it went to the Second Circuit. So much for all the judges being in Trump's pocket. They said, no, you're wrong. I accept the Pennsylvania Second Circuit that Trump's lawsuit wasn't right. Georgia, they said the Secretary of State took the law in his own hands. He changed the election laws unlawfully. A federal judge said no. I accept the federal judge even though I don't agree with it. Fraud. They said there's 66,000 people in Georgia under 18 voted. How many people believe that? I asked, give me 10. I hadn't had one. They said 8,000 felons in prison in Arizona voted. Give me 10. I hadn't gotten one. Does that say there's problems in every election? I don't buy this. Enough's enough. We got to end it. Vice President Pence, what they're asking you to do, you won't do because you can't. You talk about interesting times. I associate myself with Rand Paul.
That's enough of that guy. That is 5 years ago today. Senator Lindsey Graham saying, "I've had it. Trump and I, we've had a hell of a journey, but I'm done. Enough is enough. I'm off the Trump train." Incidentally, yesterday he was on the Trump plane. Isn't that amazing? 5 years ago, he jumped off the Trump train. However, yesterday he was on the Trump plane. And that just goes to show, what, here's Lindsey Graham yesterday.
Cuba is ready to fall. You know?
Yes, there he is.
Cuban Americans are going to be very happy.
Look at that. Yes, there he is right there on the Trump plane. But 5 years ago, he was off of the Trump train. So I guess he was just trying to upgrade his travel accommodations is what he was trying to do. But anyway, that's enough of that. Enough of that. We know that listen, there should have been more arrests. There weren't. There should have been more accountability. There wasn't. There should have been more prosecutorial actions. We have Pam Bondi as our attorney general. So why would we even expect any of that would happen? I just want you to remember, especially if you're a South Carolina voter, that Lindsey Graham is still your senator. I don't get it. I don't understand. I grew up in North Carolina. I traveled to South Carolina all the time. I mean, growing up, I spent every summer in South Carolina. My wife and I were married in South Carolina. We now every year have a family reunion in South Carolina. It's probably my second or third. It's top three when it comes to favorite states in the nation. And I have to tell you, I just can't believe that Lindsey Graham is the best that South Carolina has to offer. The United States of America. I know it's not for a fact. But that again, I don't vote there. I only vote in the state where I am a resident and legally registered, and that is the Sunshine State, the state of Florida. All right, now back to Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine Crockett, she is just, she's very angry. She's backed herself into a corner. First of all, she was redistricted out of her district by the Texas, Senate and legislature. And then the Supreme Court backed it up. And she was not happy, by the way. She was not happy at all. She was so not happy that she went on social media and told SCOTUS to go F itself.
Definitely kudos to the Trump justice who wrote the 160-page opinion denouncing what took place in Texas, and f you to the Supreme Court for what they did.
Yeah, I mean, that's just... that is Jasmine Crockett. That was for a couple days ago, and I didn't get a chance to share it with you yesterday. But that's basically her. She's basically been redistricted out of a job, and there's nothing at all. There's nothing that they can do. The one thing that she has now decided she can do, or decided she's going to do, is she's going to run for Senate in the state of Texas, which is odd because in Texas, they don't like Democrats at all. They don't like Democrats in Texas. They definitely don't elect them to Senate. Sure, you're going to find Democrats in various different districts and representatives that are Democrats along the border and in some of the major cities like Jasmine Crockett's district in Dallas or Al Green in Houston, all those places that you're not going to find them anymore. Thanks to the Texas legislature and the Supreme Court. But now she's like, all right, I'm going to run for Senate. But in Texas, they don't elect Democrats to the Senate. And even Whoopi Goldberg knows that because, well, let's face it, she probably read it off of a cue card. Whoopi Goldberg didn't know it until 5 minutes before Jasmine Crockett walked out on stage and someone handed her a little note card with factoids about Jasmine Crockett and her run for Senate. But now she does.
It's good to see y'all.
So now last month you shook everybody up. You shook up the Texas Senate race by announcing your candidacy. Texas hasn't elected a Democrat statewide in, they say, 30 years.
Well, they say 30 years. They say 30 years. It's actually, they say it because that's exactly, I mean, they're not making it up. They say 30 years because that's what it is. I mean, I don't know what's going on there.
Everyone, why you feel that's not going to be a problem?
Well, I'm not going to say it's not going to be a problem, but I will tell you that I plan to get it done. Listen, I am used to being underestimated. People that know my story know that I actually only won by 90 votes to get to the state house. And as a friend.
All right, let me explain something. This is very important. I want anyone who thinks their vote doesn't matter, anyone who thinks, oh, it's a shoo-in and my vote, I can stay home on election day. Jasmine Crockett is Jasmine Crockett because of 90 votes. Bernie Sanders is Bernie Sanders because of 12 votes. These small elections, these gateway elections. Jasmine Crockett, she didn't wake up one day and say, I'm gonna be a representative. I'm gonna be on The View. I'm gonna be a senator. No, she woke up and said, I'm gonna run for state, whatever it was, she was state senator or a state office, and she won by 90 votes. Meaning, if 90 people had stayed home, or if 90 people who stayed home didn't, she never would have had a political career. She would have been doing, I don't know, she would have been an influencer or whatever it is, whatever she was. She would have worked in a hair salon. Bernie Sanders was poised on the precipice of, he was running for mayor of his small town in Vermont. And he thought, I'm going to run for mayor. And if I don't win mayor, that's it. I'm done. I'm going back to teaching at the liberal university. I'm going to go teach something liberal. And he ran and he won by 12 votes. And because he ran for because he won by 12 votes, he became a mayor. And then I think he went to some kind of state office, and then he ran for Senate. And now he's installing Muslim socialists in the mayor's office in New York City. He's traveling around the country with AOC, and he is probably one of the most prominent and powerful communists in the entire world. And he's working diligently to install communist dictators in all of the major boroughs and all of the major cities and all of the major blue states, and all because of 12 votes. If 12 votes went the other way, Bernie Sanders would be teaching liberal something at the Liberal College in liberal Vermont. But instead, he's promoting communism in the United States. So your vote matters. Jasmine Crockett, 90 votes, fewer than 100 votes put Jasmine Crockett in the spotlight. 12 votes put Bernie Sanders in the spotlight. There's tons of other stories, but we're going to get back. We don't have time for those. Right
and I was handpicked by my predecessor to then go to the U.S. House. Listen, what I did is I evaluated the numbers. The numbers are clear that we can win. Texas is a non-voting state. We are one of the lowest voter turnout states in the entire country, with only about a little bit more than 50% of people turning out to vote. We are also a majority minority state. So for everybody that's like, well, she running for Senate and she black. Yes, I am. I am. And
okay, I like what she says. We are a majority minority state. What she's trying to say there is that black people vote for Democrats. And this is a problem or black people vote for black people. Basically, this is a problem that the Democrat Party has had over and over and over again. The assumption that voting for a black person, if you're a black person, is better than voting for a more competent white person or Asian person or Latino person or whatever, or Pacific Islander, South Asian Pacific Islander, whatever the other one. There's all of them. But that's a problem. That's a problem for the Democrats. It's been a problem for the Democrats. It will continue to be a problem for the Democrats because they play identity politics. And Jasmine Crockett's rationale here is, all right, I'm black. We got a lot of black people in Texas. I should be able to win. I should be able to win. I should be the next senator from Texas. Forget John Cornyn or Ken Paxton or whoever. It's going to be me. It's going to be me. She's out there singing and sing songs because she's like, look at all these black people. All these black people can vote for me, and I'm black. They probably will vote for me because that's how black people think. That's the most racist stereotype ever. And it's something that has failed many a Democrat and several Republicans. It's something that's failed a lot of lawmakers in the past, and it's going to fail Jasmine Crockett. Thank God.
3 million black voters.
Actually, 4.
Right? 4 million black voters.
We have more African Americans in the state of Texas than any other state. But at the end of the day, the way that I govern is I govern for the people, regardless of my race. And then there are people like, well, it's women, and you know how people feel about women. Let me tell you about the state of Texas. The state of Texas has already had 2 women governors. To be clear.
And Richards.
Our first one was in the 1930s, to be clear. And one of the best known senators from the state of Texas is actually a woman, woman Republican. So let's just stop with what we think. I want to be clear that a lot of people haven't put their numbers up, and I haven't put mine up for a good reason, because I'm playing for keeps. But let me tell you, that I know how to evaluate and I know how to win races. So I will say that, and I will also say that the front runner in this race was Colin.
Okay, so this is the dumbest thing ever. She goes, let me tell you about women. Texas has had a woman governor. 2 of them, yeah. Republicans. I think the first one, I don't know about, I don't even know if the Republican Party was around when Ma Ferguson was governor, but Ann Richards was a Republican. A white Republican, I'd like to point out. So Jasmine Crockett's playing every side of the field here. She goes, I'm black, so black people should vote for me. And I'm a woman. And I know you say that Texas isn't going to vote for women, but we had women governors. Yes, we did in Texas, or they did in Texas, but they were Republicans. They weren't lunatic Democrats. They weren't people who played the DEI card and the race card and identity politics. They were people that had actual stances that the people of Texas could get behind. They had moral values, and they weren't just, corrupt. They weren't just running for Senate because they had nothing else to do and they wanted to keep the cash cow flowing. They actually had some substance, and that's why Ann Richards was governor. I mean, because Texans looked at her and said, all right, you can represent us. Ain't nobody looking at Jasmine Crockett and saying, we want you to represent the Lone Star State. Then they got into a conversation about, current events. And of course, the most current event that everyone's talking about is Venezuela and Nicolas Maduro and Donald Trump going in there and arresting, not Donald Trump himself. He sent his people. He sent the CIA. He sent the Delta Force. He went in there. They bombed the snot out of the places they needed to bomb the snot out of. They arrested Nicolas Maduro. They hauled him into court. He pled not guilty with his wife. And now he's rolling around, in his orange jumpsuit. And he's complaining that he is a prisoner of war, that he's still the president of Venezuela. He needs to get back to rule over his people. And so they asked Jasmine Crockett about it. And Jasmine Crockett, gosh, when you ask somebody about something they don't know anything about on national television, it never really ends up really good for that. It never works out well for that person. Do you remember Kamala Harris when she was on, I don't know if it was The Breakfast Club, it was some other radio show, and Kamala Harris was asked to describe what was going on with Ukraine and Russia? And she barely got through it in like a kindergarten teacher fashion, the big country and the little country and Ukraine. And everyone was like, what are you even talking about? I got those vibes from Jasmine Crockett talking about oil in Venezuela.
Crockett, I think you have the next question.
Yes. So over the weekend, the Trump administration forcefully captured Nicolas Maduro and his wife from Venezuela without notifying Congress. President Trump is saying the U.S. will run the country of Venezuela and its oil reserves in the meantime. How do you see this playing out? What's next?
Well, we've seen this play out before. I guess this is one of the reasons that some people don't want us to know history, is so that we are doomed to repeat it, and seemingly that is what we are doing. Here's the problem. The biggest problem that I have is that it was illegal. Everything that this administration does is illegal. And so I don't know how you take the moral high ground when you are actually executing something in an unconstitutional way in the first place. Right. And so if you had what you needed, which he truly believes that, I guess, then you just would have went to Congress and gotten us involved. But instead, we're hearing leaks and reports that he talked to oil folk, but he didn't talk to Congress. Right. What kind of sense does that make? Because the last time I checked, whether or not you control an oil company does not entitle you to deciding whether or not the United States goes in. And when you look at the press conference that he held, he didn't talk about democracy. Now, I know there are a lot of people that are talking about this is good for the Venezuelan people because Maduro was a bad guy, but that's not why he did it. He has not cared about Venezuelans at all. Let me be clear about that part.
That's true.
And here's the receipts. The Enemy Aliens Act, which most of us had never heard of because it's from the 1700s, he invoked it specifically because of Venezuelans. He said, we are being attacked and invaded by Venezuelans. That was number one. Then the next thing that you know, SCOTUS, that's where he was sending Venezuelans. Remember the 60-minute episode that they did not want to air about how they were treating them, mistreating them at SCOTUS? That's where he sent Venezuelans. Then after that, he was illegally killing folk, saying that, oh, well, they're bringing drugs because it was supposedly about fentanyl, which is not where we get fentanyl, no, it isn't. To be clear. So then he killed over 100 people with these bombs that he was dropping. And then when he went in to get Maduro, he killed even more Venezuelans. This ain't about Venezuelans. I get that there are people that don't like the leader, but guess what? There are a lot of people that don't like our leader. And regardless, somebody coming into the United States and grabbing our leader in the middle of the night and killing people in this country, I'm sure everybody would be outraged at them doing it that way.
Yes. It's the way that it's done. But nobody stops. It's the way that it was done.
The interesting thing about this is, I mean, there's so much to unpack. There's so much. First of all, it wasn't that Donald Trump was, it's not that Donald Trump was angry with Venezuelans. He was angry with criminal thug gang members. That's what Donald Trump wasn't deporting or sending Venezuelans to SCOTUS. He was deporting and he was sending illegal thug gang member alien criminal masterminds to SCOTUS. It wasn't just Venezuelans. And it's not that the Venezuelans were coming here legally. These were illegal immigrants. He's saying Donald Trump doesn't like Venezuelans. He doesn't like illegal aliens coming from any country, whether it's Mexico or El Salvador or anything else. She conveniently leaves that out. She goes, well, Donald Trump sent Venezuelans to SCOTUS. No, he sent criminals, because unlike her, their background, their geographical, background or their, where they're from doesn't matter to Donald Trump. All that matters is, are you here illegally? Are you a criminal thug drug gang member? Great. We're going to send you back home, or we're going to send you to prison in El Salvador. Either one of those are fine. The drug boats, he wasn't killing people in drug boats. He was, again, getting rid of narco terrorists who were bringing drugs to this country. And it's fentanyl, not fentanyl. It's not Tylenol, it's fentanyl. And the fact of the matter is, there were drug boats with fentanyl and with cocaine and with other drugs coming to the United States of America. And I would argue that it doesn't matter what drugs you're sending. All drugs are pretty much bad. All drugs should be stopped. If you have a boat full of drugs and it's headed to the United States of America and it's coming from a cartel, bomb it out of the water. And we've been down that road with the Senate and the Congress and the War Powers Act and everything else 1,000 times. It doesn't make a difference. But the interesting thing about The View is that there are people who are happy that Venezuela is free of Maduro. There are people that believe this is the next step toward Venezuelan democracy. There are people that believe that Venezuela and the Venezuelans are going to be more successful and happier, and they will be living a longer, freer life. And what Donald Trump did is a good thing. There are people like that. One of them is a host of The View, Ana Navarro, who got into it yesterday with Whoopi Goldberg and Sunny Hostin, because they were trying to explain that the election in Venezuela was not what everyone thought it was, and that this guy maybe should have not been snatched by President Donald Trump. Listen to Ana Navarro go off on her co-hosts.
Your question, who voted for this? The people in South Florida. The Venezuelan community, the Cuban American community, the Nicaraguan American community voted for this. And for us, this is a very, very happy day when we see a dictator who has been part of oppressing and abusing the Venezuelan people for 25 years. When we see him in handcuffs and held to some sort of accountability, it brought me to tears. It brought me great joy. And, I live in South Florida.
But are you okay with the way that it was done?
But you can, I think both things can be true.
Okay.
I think you can criticize and ask questions and have concerns about the way it was done and what this means in the future.
Right.
And I think you can still celebrate that this murderous, corrupt, sadistic son of a bitch is out of Venezuela.
Yeah.
Because he has... I think there's 8 million Venezuelan exiles all over the world. People have fled from this man's tyrannical rule. So
there you go. So Ana Navarro, who, by the way, was noticeably absent when Jasmine Crockett came on to talk about Venezuela. Ana Navarro said, Whoopi Goldberg goes, who voted for that? Who voted for Venezuela to be free of Nicolas Maduro? And Ana Navarro's like, Venezuelans in South Florida and Nicaraguans in South Florida and Cubanos in South Florida and Mexicans in South Florida, everybody in South Florida. The Colombians, you know why? Because Venezuela, which I guarantee none of these women could actually point to on a map. I would love, this is the first thing that they should do. Here's my take. Before anybody is allowed to talk about a foreign country, the leader of that foreign country, or any and all military actions that may or may not have happened in that country, they should be able to identify that country on a map. And I think that before The View sits down, and before Whoopi Goldberg and Sunny Hostin in the rest of them sit down and say, all right, let's talk about Venezuela, they should drop a map and say, point to it. Anyone who can actually, they should all get a little, like, they could get a little sticker with their face on it, right? And it's like, okay, stick your face where you think Venezuela is on this map. And if you're right, you can then proceed with the conversation. If you're wrong, then I'm sorry, you have to sit down and zip your lip, because if you can't even point to this country on a map, clearly you don't know enough about it to have any kind of common sense opinion about anything that happens. Ana Navarro, I believe, could probably point to Venezuela on a map. Whoopi Goldberg, I don't even think she could spell map. But again, that's just me. Jasmine Crockett, Venezuela, oil, no Ana Navarro. Really kind of interesting the way they and I would cry racism if I were Ana Navarro. I'd say you don't want the Latina on the panel when you're talking about Venezuela. If anyone should be there when they're talking about this kind of thing, it should be Ana Navarro. But they didn't want her arguing with Jasmine Crockett because she handed it to Sunny Hostin and Whoopi Goldberg just 24 hours prior. Then, of course, because it's January 6th, guess what they asked Jasmine Crockett about? January 6th.
Let me ask you quickly, because we're running out of time. Today is January 6th. It marks the 5-year anniversary of the insurrection on the Capitol.
I'm sorry, I'd like to fact check that. Where are the fact checkers? Where are the fact checkers on? So there was no insurrection on the Capitol. There was no insurrection. There were no weapons brought in by any of the protesters. The government was not overthrown or toppled in any way. There was a brief recess while they cleared the Capitol building. The Capitol building that Nancy Pelosi herself said she should have actually fortified with all of the troops that President Donald Trump had offered her just hours before, that she turned down, that she denied. I want fact checkers on this.
But President Trump has pardoned everyone involved. He shut down Jack Smith's investigation. We just heard from Jack Smith. He continues targeting his political opponents. Now, why do you think so many Americans are minimizing January 6th? And as someone who was in the room, my understanding, for Jack Smith's deposition and testimony, what was most striking to you?
Jack Smith was the right guy for the job. I do want the American people to know that. This was someone who not only had the experience, but also understands what it is to actually be a prosecutor. You are to seek justice, not convictions. He made it very plain that it didn't matter what political affiliation someone had. He would have done the exact same thing.
He's worked for both Republicans and Democrats.
He's worked for both. And so he was very credible. And, you know, I do want to just say this. Everyone wants to talk about how Maduro was illegitimate. As we sit here on January 6th, I do want to be clear. Somebody else was trying to be a Maduro of the United States. Somebody else wanted to do the exact same thing. The difference is Maduro was successful. I also want to point out that we now, in the state of Texas and around this country, are enduring this ridiculous redistricting.
All right, we'll get to that in just a minute. She says that President Donald Trump wanted to be a Maduro. President Donald Trump wanted to be a Maduro. We have somebody in this country, President Donald Trump, who wants to be a Maduro. She is out there and she is trying to turn President Donald Trump into the king again, the dictator. Donald Trump brings a dictator to justice and they are angry. And they say, by bringing this dictator to justice, you are acting like a dictator. It's a really weird concept. Also, Donald Trump does not want anything to do with Maduro. He does not act like he's not aligning himself with gang members. He's not a state sponsor of criminal activity. He's not producing deadly drugs. He's not in bed with Iran and Russia and China. He's not sending oil to these countries so that they can support terrorism. He's not doing any of that. He's not suppressing his people, torturing his people in the town square. There's a couple he may want to, but he's not doing it. Donald Trump is abiding by the law. He is, when there's ever a court or an appeal process or anything that happens, he submits to that. During the election of 2020, which he to this day refutes, he left Washington, D.C. peacefully in a helicopter, and he came back 4 years later after winning the election fair and square. I mean, these are not things that a dictator would do. If Donald Trump were a dictator, if Donald Trump were Maduro, there never would have been a Joe Biden. Think about it that way. Nicolas Maduro lost his election and refused to leave. Nicolas Maduro tortured people, murdered people. 8 million Venezuelans fled the country. Have 8 million Americans fled the country? I know a bunch said they would. So far, I think Rosie O'Donnell's the only one, and she only counts for like 2.5 or 3 Americans. Just by per pound. But that there's nowhere near a comparison to Maduro. But Jasmine Crockett doesn't know any better, and unfortunately, neither do the people on The View or watching The View.
Again, because he doesn't really believe in free and fair elections. So again, this idea that he is doing this for a great reason. He made it clear, because it's my understanding that when he went into that press conference, he said at least 20 times, oil, 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 oil.
He sure did.
Listen to him when he speaks. He's telegraphing. And so Jack Smith, I hate that he did not get his day in court. I hate that for the American people.
Okay. Well, if you want to know more about what Jack Smith said, you can go to our website because we have it up. Yep. Just wanted to let you know that. But, we're going and coming.
Do you think Whoopi Goldberg knows what The View's website is? Do you think she knows? Do you think she knows, A, where Venezuela is on the map, and B, what The View's website is? That I really think I would institute that. I'm going to institute that rule here on Mark K Saves the Republic. From now on, whenever any guest starts to talk about any country, whether it's Ukraine or Israel or Gaza or anything, especially Venezuela, you have to be able to pinpoint it. You have to be able to pinpoint it on a map. And if you can't pinpoint it on the map, you got to zip your lip and leave it to the host. Now, with AOC and with Jasmine Crockett, now with their futures kind of up in the air, Jasmine Crockett has no future in politics. AOC has nothing but a future in politics. And one of our favorite senators, John Kennedy from Louisiana, was on some podcast, I don't know which one it was, and he was talking about Chuck Schumer and how Chuck Schumer continues to be a slave to the woke, DEI-laced young contingent of his party, how he's being browbeaten by these younger people in his party, how he's trying to kowtow to this Gen Z voting bloc and he's failing miserably, how he's trying to give AOC and Jasmine Crockett and everyone else there enough room so that he can seem like the cool guy. Instead of doing what's right, he's succumbing to their whims and it's destroying his political career. And he basically says, look, everybody knows that these two are destructive. But what's happening is you got Chuck Schumer's too weak to do anything about it.
Chuck is a deeply political animal. He's been in Washington a long time. He sees everything, almost everything, through a political lens. And right now, he knows what you know, what I know. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez is going to do one of three things. She's either going to run for Speaker of the House if the Democrats take control. She's going to run against Chuck Schumer for the Senate, or she's going to run for president. And you say, well, she's nutty as a fruitcake. She can't win. I don't know.
I mean, look what just happened in New York City.
Yeah, look what happened in New York City. Yeah. Look at Congresswoman Crockett.
Yeah.
You just never know. And so everything, in my opinion, almost everything, I don't want to be unfair, that Senator Schumer is doing is to try to get the left, the loony left, the Bolshevik wing of his party, to love him. And they will never love him.
And they'll never love him. He's
just better off doing what he thinks is right. When he worked with us not to shut down government back in March, he did the right thing. He got the living hell beat out of him by the people on his side.
Yeah.
And since then, it's just clear by you got to watch what politicians do, not what they say. And I regret that, but I'm a pragmatist. I deal with the world as it is. And that's the world we live in the United States Senate.
Yeah, there you go. It was a Rubin report, by the way, which I just didn't have it written down. But Chuck Schumer has a lot of problems. First of all, he doesn't know that you don't put cheese on the raw side of the burger. Also, he's threatened Supreme Court justices. Also, he's going to lose whatever election he runs for. Also, AOC is going to make him politically irrelevant. Also, he's old. I mean, there's so many problems with Chuck Schumer, but one of the biggest is that Chuck Schumer, his biggest enemy is himself. Chuck Schumer is, you want to talk about, he's right about him being a political animal, more so even than Lindsey Graham. You think Lindsey Graham blows with the wind? You think he flip-flops? You think he's a waffler? Well, you're right. But Chuck Schumer is even worse. And Chuck Schumer doesn't even care. He makes no bones about it. Listen to Chuck Schumer in 2020 criticizing President Donald Trump in 2020 for not doing enough about Nicolas Maduro and his regime.
He brags about all these things he wants to do or is doing, but his actions belie his words. Maybe the best metaphor was his claim to bring democracy to Venezuela. There was a big policy there. It flopped. If the policy was working, Juan Guaido wouldn't be in the balcony here. He'd be in Venezuela. He'd be sitting in the president's palace, or at least waging a fight to win. He's here. And the president brags about his Venezuela policy? Give us a break. He hasn't brought an end to the Maduro regime. The Maduro regime is more powerful today and more entrenched today than it was when the president began.
He's so mad. He's so mad. Donald Trump has not brought an end to the Maduro regime. Regime? The Maduro regime is bigger and stronger than it ever has been before. Is it RAYG? Regime? I don't know. It's regime. I thought it was regime, right? RE? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. The regime of Nicolas Maduro. Donald Trump had a policy to get rid of Nicolas Maduro in 2020, and it flopped, according to Chuck Schumer. Donald Trump talked a big game. If Donald Trump were going to fix Venezuela and get rid of Maduro, this guy sitting in the balcony who's clearly exiled would be in Venezuela and not in the balcony of the Senate listening to me mispronounce the word regime. Donald Trump has done nothing to get rid of Nicolas Maduro, and it's a travesty. That was 2020 Chuck Schumer. Listen to 2026 Chuck Schumer talking to George Snuffleupagus about the Maduro regime. Hang on, here it is. Ready? And a 1 and a 2 and a 3.
So what can the Congress do about it is the next question.
Well, the next question is very simple. And that is that we have the War Powers Act. That's a privilege resolution, which means the Republicans can't block it. Tim Kaine and I and Rand Paul are sponsors of it. It's going to come to the floor this week. And if it is voted for, if it's voted positively in both houses, then the president can't do another thing in Venezuela without the okay of Congress. We have to pass it.
Okay, so now they're like, look, the war powers that we've got this and we've got to pass it, and we've got to stymie Donald Trump. We've got to stop President Donald Trump. The interesting thing about the war,
to be very precise.
Pardon me. What is happening? The interesting thing about the War Powers Act is that nobody in the Senate really, it appears, has read it or seems to know what it is. Jasmine Crockett clearly has no idea. Senator Schumer doesn't really even know. And so leave it to Mike Johnson. Leave it to Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who Donald Trump had some really kind words to say about today. He was speaking to the GOP earlier this morning, and he was going on and on about how great Mike Johnson was. But listen to Mike Johnson. He took a moment yesterday. He brought notes, and he wanted to make sure explicitly that he told the media on camera so that everybody would know. He wanted everybody to know this is what the Constitution says. These are the powers that the president does and does not have.
I want to be very precise. I don't typically read from notes, but I want to be very precise about what we've heard and what we're facing here. So I'm going to share with you some thoughts on paper here. Let me say this with regard to the top line on all of this. The U.S. military operation in Venezuela was a decisive and justified action. Nicolas Maduro is responsible for the deaths of untold thousands of Americans after years of trafficking illegal drugs and violent cartel members into our country. This is undisputed and everybody agrees with it. These are crimes for which he's been indicted in U.S. courts, and an arrest warrant was duly issued. And now he has learned what accountability looks like. Under President Trump, the United States will no longer allow criminal regimes to profit from wreaking havoc and destruction on our country. He's putting Americans first and succeeding where others have failed, and this is very clear. This operation demonstrated the unmatched precision and effectiveness, professionalism, and capability of the U.S. military. There's no other force on planet Earth that can do what we can do. And it produced an outcome only America's armed forces could achieve. Our brave military personnel who executed this successful operation with speed and precision and power deserve our gratitude and our congratulations. You should sleep a little better at night knowing that we have this great force. The Maduro regime functioned as a criminal organization masquerading as a government. This was not a legitimate president of a country. It systematically used the instruments of the Venezuela state, which is its military, its intelligence services, and its territory, to facilitate trafficking drugs into the United States. These activities were conducted in coordination with designated narco-terrorists and transnational criminal organizations that are very dangerous, directly threatening the U.S.'s sovereignty and public health and national security. The Biden administration, the previous team, offered a $25 million bounty for information leading to Maduro's arrest, following a successful 2020 indictment. Maduro had multiple opportunities to change course and cooperate with international law enforcement, and he chose not to do that. And now he's going to face the full force of American justice on U.S. soil. Congress continues to exercise oversight of U.S. military operations and closely track the situation. Tonight's briefing to the Gang of Eight was a part of that. This briefing was the 20th bipartisan briefing on military operations involving Venezuela so far. The administration has scheduled an all-member briefing on Wednesday, and I don't know if it's confirmed while we were in there, but it will be
okay, all right, so you get he's going on and on. So basically there it is. There he is. He's talking about what the War Powers Act says, what the Constitution says, what President Donald Trump has the right to do, what President Trump did do. President Donald Trump did notify Congress within 48 hours of the operation, which is what he's required to do by the War Powers Act that all of these senators like Chuck Schumer and like Tim Kaine and even Rand Paul like to spout off on all the time. Even Mike Lee was talking about it the morning of the attack, and he backed off. But the fact of the matter is, like it or not, and I'll tell this to Republicans too, because I get a lot of Republicans on my Facebook page. There's probably some right now. Every time I post about Venezuela or the drug boats or Iran or everything else, there's people on my feed going, how can you support Donald Trump? He's supposed to be America first. How can you support Donald? How can you support this illegal act? Look, Donald Trump is not acting illegally. You may not like what he did. You may not like that he bombed Iran and took out their nuclear capabilities. You may not like that he's killing narco terrorists and taking out their drug boats. You may not like that he went in and arrested Nicolas Maduro. You may not like that. But what you like and what's constitutional and legal are two totally different things. I don't like that Jasmine Crockett can go on her phone and say F you to the Supreme Court. But I love the Constitution and I respect the right that she has to do it. I don't like it, but it's constitutional.
Definitely kudos to the Trump justice who wrote the 160-page opinion denouncing what took place in Texas, and you to the Supreme Court for what they did.
Yeah, totally constitutional. Unlikable, disgusting, totally constitutional. You may think Donald Trump is unlikable. You may think what he does is totally disgusting. It's not against the law. And that's a very specific. If you don't like what Donald Trump's doing, you probably shouldn't have voted for him. But you know who does like it? All those, you know who voted for it? All those people in South Florida, all the people that were dancing in the streets of Miami, all of the Venezuelans and the Colombians and the Nicaraguans and the El Salvador and everybody else who was affected by the Nicolas Maduro regime. Because look, Nick, I'll show you, you know what? In fact, here, I'll show you the map. All right. Venezuela on the map. Let me show you something real quick here. I'm going to pull up a map of Venezuela. Okay. Here is Venezuela. All right. Look, we can collapse this. So here's Venezuela. Okay. Here it is. Here's Florida. Here's me. Here's Mar-a-Lago right here in Jacksonville, home of the soon-to-be Super Bowl champion Jaguars. Here's Orlando with woke Mickey Mouse, Tampa, you know the drill. And then here's Miami, where all of the people in South Florida were celebrating. So down here is Venice. I don't know why my mouse is so, it's like all or nothing with this mouse. So here's Venezuela. Okay. Let me zoom in a little bit. Now, Venezuela is in close proximity to Miami. There's Miami, Key West, the Bahamas, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Venezuela. Okay, so 8 million Venezuelans have fled. 8 million Venezuelans have fled, okay? Now, when 8 million Venezuelans flee their country, where do they go? Okay, some of them try to make their way up to the United States of America, and Nicolas Maduro put a bunch of them there, but most of them go into Colombia, and they go into Brazil, and I guess some of them go to Guyana. But what happened? They end up, down here in Ecuador and Peru. What happens is 8 million Venezuelans who are afraid of Nicolas Maduro, who don't like the Maduro regime, who are poor, who are broke, who are afraid for their lives, who are being tortured, who can't afford to live they just can't afford to live there. They're living in poverty. They're impoverished, and they can't speak up because they have no rights. So what do? They flee and they come here to Colombia, or they go to Brazil. And all of a sudden, Brazil and Colombia have 8 million people, which is a lot of people. They get an influx of 8 million people. You remember what it was like for the United States of America. All right. We had 25, 30 million people come through our border. You remember the crime? You remember what it did to our education system and our hospital system and our school system and everything else? Remember the traffic in LA that they were complaining about? You have that many people come into the United States. Well, Colombia is a fraction of the size, and they're getting 8 million or 4 million. Brazil getting 8 million or 4 million. That is why it's such a problem. Not just for us, the United States of America, but because of everybody in the Western Hemisphere. And that's what Donald Trump has been saying. That's what Marco Rubio has been saying. In fact, Marco Rubio where's Marco Rubio? Marco Rubio said it beautifully to somebody on NBC. What's her name on NBC? About how this has been a huge problem for everything, for everyone, and how we are going to make sure that it's not an issue. And it's not about oil.
States need to take over the Venezuelan oil industry.
Well, we don't need to. First of all, let me go back up. We don't need Venezuela's oil. We have plenty of oil in the United States. What we're not going to allow is for the oil industry in Venezuela to be controlled by adversaries of the United States. You have to understand, why does China need their oil? Why does Russia need their oil? Why does Iran need their oil? They're not even in this continent. This is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live. And we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be a base of operation for adversaries, competitors, and rivals of the United States.
Have specific oil
We
companies.
also want to see that oil and the proceeds from it. Hold on. We want to see the oil proceeds of that country benefit the people of Venezuela. Why have 8 million people left Venezuela? 8 million, the single largest mass migration probably in modern history, left Venezuela since 2014 because all the wealth of that country was stolen to the benefit of Maduro and his cronies in the regime, but not to the benefit of people of Venezuela. You know how destabilizing 8 million migrants is? The number one fear that Brazil has, that Colombia has, that all these countries in the region have about what's happening in Venezuela and our involvement is they're afraid of another mass migration event. That's what they fear. This is deeply destabilizing stuff. It's not going to continue to happen. They are not going to come from outside of our hemisphere, destabilize our region in our own backyard, and us have to pay the price for it. Not under President Trump.
Let's talk.
Do you know how destabilizing 8 million migrants can be? Fun fact, we all do, as a matter of fact. Yes, we do. Having lived through the Joe Biden years, having lived in the United States from 2020 to 2025, we all know how destabilizing 8 million or 25 million or 50 million or however many million it actually was. We all know what mass migration can do to a country, to an economy, to crime, to safety, to everything. We know. We've lived it. And even what's her name from Meet the Press is like, yes, I do. I totally understand it. And we're not going to let it happen. Why? Because of oil? No, because we live here. This is our neighborhood. The Western Hemisphere is our hemisphere, and we are going to do everything we can to protect assets in the Western Hemisphere. And with Venezuela, what you're seeing mass migration, which leaves into Colombia and Brazil, and we have good friends there, and it comes up here into the United States of America, especially the criminal element, and the drugs are on the boats, and the this and the that, and the oil money is going to China, and China's building submarines and ships so that they can, defeat us in what many people think is an inevitable war in the future. Iran is using the money just to terrorize us, and Russia's using the money to fight Ukraine, which we're on the other side of as well. So it's really a win-win-win for us. and for Venezuela and for Ukraine and for Israel and everybody who's been terrorized by any of those axis of evil powers. I mean, I don't understand why these people don't understand it, or I don't understand why they feel the need to try to explain it away. Then you've got Jake Tapper. You guys ready for some Miller time? Jake Tapper, Stephen Miller and Jake Tapper were going at it. And I played this earlier today, but I want to play it again because I enjoy it so much. Where is it? It's Jake Tapper and Stephen Miller. And the two of them, it was, I guess Jake Tapper was upset. Let me try to set the scene for you. So Donald Trump says, okay, Nicolas Maduro and his wife, we've got indictments, we've got arrest warrants, we're going to go and arrest them. So Donald Trump goes in and he arrests Nicolas Maduro and his wife, and they leave. And half the people on the left are like, that was illegal. You shouldn't have done that. You're a war criminal. We're at war with Venezuela. You're a dictator. That was half of the people on the left. The other half of the people on the left are like, well, you got Nicolas Maduro out, but you left everybody else. You left his vice president. You left the chief of police. You left his army. You left his generals. So it's still the Maduro regime. You just got rid of Nicolas Maduro. So Donald Trump, get this. Jake Tapper is admitting that Donald Trump did not do the one thing that a lot of people are accusing Donald Trump of doing. He didn't commit regime change. He didn't commit to regime change, or he didn't try to overthrow or insurrect or change the regime in Venezuela. On the contrary, he took one guy and one guy's wife and he brought him to New York to stand trial. And now Jake Tapper is arguing that you should have just you should have just overthrown the government.
The United States is using its military to secure our interests unapologetically in our hemisphere. We're a superpower, and under President Trump, we are going to conduct ourselves as a superpower. It is absurd that we would allow a nation in our own backyard to become the supplier of resources to our adversaries, but not to us, to hoard weapons from our adversaries, to be able to be positioned as an asset against the United States, rather than on behalf of the United States.
Sovereign countries shouldn't be able to do what they want to do.
The Monroe Doctrine and the Trump Doctrine is all about securing the national interests of America. For years, we sent our soldiers to die in deserts in the Middle East to try to build them parliaments, to try to build them democracies, to try to give them more oil, to try to give them more resources. The future of the free world, Jake, depends on America being able to assert ourselves and our interests without apology. This whole period that happened after World War II, where the West began apologizing and groveling and begging
I don't even
and
know,
engaging these
honestly,
mass
what you're talking about right
schemes.
now.
What I'm talking about, Jake, is the idea. And by the way, I know you love doing that smarmy thing, Jake, and I was hoping to be better than that this time.
I asked you about if there should be an election.
Exactly.
I asked you if there would be an election in Venezuela. That's what I asked. I said, why was the president so quick to dismiss Machado? You answered that question. And then I said,
the objective, Jake, is security and stability for the people of Venezuela. With our help and leadership, that country will become more prosperous than it has ever been in its whole history. Venezuelans
but the woman
will be
running Venezuela right now is part of the Maduro regime.
There will be conversations, Jake, about all of these guideposts along the way. The reason why I was giving you that speech, which I know you didn't want to hear, is because you're approaching this from the wrong frame. This neoliberal frame that the United States' job is to go around the world and demanding immediate elections be held everywhere, immediately, all the time, right away. To create these vacuums.
That's not what I think, but you invaded the country. We went into the country and we seized the leader of Venezuela.
Damn straight we did.
And I'm saying,
we're not going to let.
So is the U.S. going to have new elections?
Jake, is that we're not going to let Tim Pot communist dictators send rapists into our country, send drugs into our country, send weapons into our country.
Okay.
And we're not going to let a country fall into the hands of our adversaries. The future of Venezuela, working with America, is going to be so bright and so incredible and so positive, and we'll have a conversation about everything that you raised. But the priority right now, as the president has made clear, is a judicious, thoughtful, careful transition process to secure a great future for Venezuela and to secure a great future for America.
All right.
Let's just take a moment and just acknowledge, Jake, that what we've witnessed under President Trump's leadership this last week is one of the greatest foreign policy and military victories this country has ever had.
Okay, do you remember, by the way, a few weeks ago when CNN refused to have Stephen Miller on and the White House kept saying, we would like to have Stephen Miller on, and they said, what topic? And they go, any topic, and they go, when's he available? And the White House said, he's available anytime, anywhere, on any topic that you would like to discuss. And CNN said, sorry, we're busy. This is why. This is why. Because Jake Tapper can't keep up with Stephen Miller. Jake Tapper can't spin. He can't outspin Stephen Miller. He can't try to convince Stephen Miller that Donald Trump should have done the one thing that the Democrats are actually accusing him of. Because if Donald Trump had done the one thing that the Democrats are actually accusing him of, then the Democrats wouldn't just be accusing him of it, they'd be speaking the truth. But because Donald Trump didn't go in and overthrow the entire regime and overthrow the government and annex Venezuela the way he talks about doing Greenland, they're mad. They're mad. Now they're like, well, you took Maduro, but you left the rest of them. You couldn't have taken everyone else? No. Why? Because we didn't invade Venezuela. It wasn't a war with Venezuela. It was an arrest of a criminal who has killed millions of Americans and Europeans and Venezuelans and people all over the globe. And that's why that's why they don't have Stephen Miller on CNN. it's true. They're going to reenact that policy, by the way. They're going to be like, okay, remember that no Stephen Miller policy? We got to get, that's back. That's back and better than ever. I've been talking a lot about The View and Jasmine Crockett, and I know that we're getting close to an hour, and here's the thing. I try to leave this show around an hour for a couple of reasons. Number one, whenever I publish a show or produce a show or do a podcast that's an hour, people always write to me and they go, oh, can you make it longer? And I feel like that's a benefit. I feel like that's good. When people say we want more of you, I think that's good. What you don't want is people going, how much longer? Like sometimes I'll be watching a TV show, right? We'll be streaming something and my wife, it's getting late and it's getting tired and the show's dragging and my wife's like, how much longer? And I have to hit pause and I go, there's like 27 more minutes. And she's like, oh my God, do I really want to spend 27 more minutes of my life on this? And I'm like, I'm with you. Let's turn it off now. And I don't want that either. So I try not to go too long because I feel like it's, leave them wanting more. You want people to want you to keep coming back. You don't want people to be like, is this guy ever going to leave? But there are a couple more things that I want to talk about. One of them is Tampon Tim Walz. And Tampon Tim Walz, Brett Baer had a panel, I forget who this was, but summed up, it's amazing. And I don't know, I know that X is out there and I know people, I basically said this same thing yesterday on X and then I turn on Fox News and I hear the same thing. So I don't know if these people follow me or whatnot, but I think in the case of Tampon Tim, everybody understands that this guy had one of the most glorious rises and falls from grace. Tampon Tim Walz, a year ago, I mean, think about this. It's been less than a year. A year ago, nobody outside of Minnesota knew who Tampon Tim Walz was. Not a single person outside of Minnesota had ever heard of Tim Walz. They didn't know, they couldn't pick him out of a crowd. They didn't know that he put tampons in the boys' room. They didn't know that he was the creepy football coach. They didn't know that anything at all. And Tampon Tim Walz got in good with the Obama people because he sucked up to Obama good, man. He was like a vacuum cleaner. He sucked up to all of them. He sucked up to Biden, all those people. And so Tampon Tim Walz got himself into the national spotlight when it came to talk of vice presidential candidates. And the reason I believe that Tampon Tim Walz was chosen to run with Kamala Harris is because he's a white guy who played football. He's from a purplish state and he's not Jewish. I think that's the reason why. I think they looked around. They're like, we've got Kamala Harris. She's from California. She's Indian. No, she's black. No, she's Indian. No, she's black. She's not white. We know that. We need a foil. And they looked around and they go, J.B. Pritzker. Nope. Too fat. Also, he's a billionaire and we're running against a billionaire. So we can't have a billionaire on the ticket and then talk about how billionaires are bad, right? Like it was Donald Trump, billionaire, and Elon Musk, billionaire. So you can't have Kamala Harris, multimillionaire, and J.B. Pritzker, billionaire. It just doesn't look good. So they're like, J.B. Pritzker's out. Too fat, too rich. Then they look at what everybody thought was the obvious choice of Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, but that dude's Jewish. And you may remember at the time, and still today, the Democrats don't like Jewish people. They like Muslims and Somalis. This was at the same time, this time last year, on the campus of Columbia in New York City, on the campus of Harvard, in Boston, in Cambridge, on campuses all over the country, you had Democrats who were pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel, anti-Jew, posing. They had all these protests. They were camping out. They were taking over large swaths of the quad. They were living in tents. They weren't showering. They were breaking into libraries. They were taking down American flags and replacing them with Palestinian flags. They were attacking and harassing Jewish people. Jewish students were in fear for their lives. And a lot of these universities, they just turned a blind eye. They were like, they can protest. They can live out there. That's fine. We don't want to anger the pro-Palestinian people, even though it's going to cost us millions of dollars in Jewish donors. But Josh Shapiro couldn't, they couldn't have a Jewish person on the ticket. They'd lose the entire Palestinian vote. Not like it mattered in the end. Also, I think Josh Shapiro was like, there's no way I'm hitching my wagon to this dumpster fire. So that left them with Tampon Tim Walz, white dude from Minnesota who played football, pretended like he knew what hunting was, and even though he was a white old guy from Minnesota, he still liked to put tampons in the boys' room. So he seemed like the perfect fit. He wasn't rich. He hated people that went to Yale, like J.D. Vance and Amy Klobuchar, who, fun fact, may actually now ironically be taking his place as governor. So that's kind of what they were left with. But then what happened is when he squiggled and squirmed his way into the national spotlight was placed on him, and we all realized, oh my God, this guy is a creep, he's an idiot, and also he's criminally corrupt.
VP nominee to not running for governor, that's quite something.
It's a fall. It is richly deserved. His performance today was characteristically unimpressive. And for the Democrats in Minnesota, this could be addition by subtraction. If they want to hold on to the governor's mansion later on this year, having him as a piñata off the table could benefit the Democrats, actually.
Look at that. So they're saying the Democrats had to force Tampon Tim out. They couldn't have him running because he would have just become a piñata. People would have been beating him over and over again over the Somali fraud scandal. Absolutely. This is the same guy, don't forget, that shot at Minnesotans who were sitting on their own front porches during COVID. This is a guy who just embarrassed himself publicly over and over again while running for president. Kamala Harris was a piñata enough. They don't need it. They've learned their lesson. They're de-escalating these clowns. They're taking these clowns off of these tickets so that they can maybe have a legitimate chance. And Guy Benson says, I think that they may have saved themselves. They could probably now salvage the election for governor in Minnesota if they get the right candidate. And the right candidate appears to be Amy Klobuchar, who went to Yale, a place that Tim Walz abhors. And that's interesting because it leaves not one, but two Senate openings in Minnesota coming up in the next election. There's already one Senate opening, but if Amy Klobuchar steps down to run for governor, that would make it two. Caroline Levitt was asked about the fraud case and Tampon Tim. Here's what she said.
The great people of Minnesota, a state that was once known as the land of 10,000 lakes, has been turned into the land of 10,000 Somali schemes because of their governor. And don't forget, this is a guy who was at the top of the Democrat Party's ticket, the number 2. He was Kamala Harris's running mate just about a year ago until President Trump crushed them last November. And it was in large part because the president was calling out this fraud. And so this has been a day one priority for the Trump administration, Jesse. The Department of Justice has convicted and prosecuted nearly 100 defendants in Minnesota. And because of these new details and this new reporting that has come to light, this is a all hands on deck across the entire government effort. We are surging resources. You saw today the Department of Homeland Security announced we have nearly 2,000 agents from the Homeland Security Investigations Team. The FBI is on the ground, and we're freezing money. HHS cut off funding for child care centers and for daycares. USDA Secretary Rollins has been asking Governor Walz to see the recipients of SNAP in his state. So this is all hands on deck. Rest assured, it's a top priority for President Trump. And he believes that Governor Walz is criminally liable. And I think the Department of Justice is going to find out.
Look at that. The problem with having political ambition, the problem with putting yourself in front of the spotlight is you're in front of the spotlight and people are going to look at you and they're going to see the problems and they're going to call them out. And one day You're traveling the country, dining out. People are cheering your name. You're driving around in a bus. You're running for vice president. The next day, you're being chased by a 23-year-old with an iPhone who's calling out your fraud and forcing you to step down and not run for any political office. His career has skyrocketed and come crashing back down to earth faster, I think, than anyone else's political career in recent history. Anyway, that's all I have to say today, but we will be back tomorrow with more. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, we are dangerously close to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I say dangerously close because here's the danger in getting to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. When you get to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, you tend to get a big head. And that means that I'm gonna have to get all new hats. Just kidding, they're adjustable. No, but the danger would be that I get a big head and I start going on because here's what I see it all the time. People get to like 100,000 YouTube subscribers and they start posting, I have 100,000, and they get all the balloons and they have parties and stuff like that. Like anything in their life really changes. I don't know. I think you get a plaque. That's cool. So the danger is that I would just become impossible to live with. Right. And look, it's a risk I'm willing to take. But I also think, and I can't prove this, but I also think when you get to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, YouTube realizes that you're more serious than maybe someone who doesn't have 100,000 subscribers. And I think you automatically get promoted more because what I notice, and again, I don't know I'm just totally talking out of my rear end. I don't know any of this, but I've noticed with my eyes and from what I've studied that people that get to 100,000 followers or subscribers on YouTube, it takes them a while. It's taken us years. We've been at this for years. Now, a year ago, we had probably 40,000, 45,000. So we've doubled in a year, which is nice. But it takes a while to get there. But what I've noticed is once you get to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, it could take you 5 years. To get to 200,000, it takes like 6 months. And then 300,000 takes another 6 months. And then you're at 1 million in like 2 years. And then once you get to 1 million, it's just, you're like at 5 million in a week and a half. So I don't know how that works, but I have to imagine that's part of the inner workings of the YouTube algorithm. So what the long and the short of this is, if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe because we want to test that theory for ourselves. Also, if you're on Facebook or Rumble or any of those other platforms, Rumble, we want to get to 100,000 subscribers because we get a green Rumble thing. We get a green Rumble thing. If you're a YouTube channel with a lot of subscribers, you get a silver plaque. If you're a Rumble person, you get a Rumble thing. I don't know what the benefit. I mean, again, it's just really, here's why I really think it's important that you share this and spread the word. It's because this word is important. We're talking about the truth. We're talking about relevance. We're talking about people who are attacking you and your convictions and your morals and your Christianity and your Americana, whatever it is, whatever you feel, whatever identifies you as you, guess what? Somebody hates you for it. A lot of somebody's hate you for it. And a lot of them are running for office. And a lot of them are in the news media. And a lot of them spend every single day attacking you, whether you know it or not, trying to tear you down, whether you know it or not, and trying to make it impossible for you to live in this country as you, with your thoughts, with your moral standards, with your Christian principles, with all of that stuff. So we show up every single day to try to combat them and inspire you and keep you hard pressed to give up and enlightened to what's going on and entertained in the process. And we want you to spread that word to as many other people as you can so that we can continue to help as many Patriots as we can. And we can continue to train as many Patriots as we can. And we can continue to prepare one of the largest online movements so that all of us are ready every single day to fight, so we can save the Republic. We are still, by the way, working on some technical issues with the after party. So there's no after party today, but we're gonna work on that, and hopefully soon, it'll work. I mean, it'll eventually work. I just have to figure out